absolutely needs to make a commitment to our allies, allies who have stood behind us for years, the first and foremost being Israel, our ally for 62 years, who in recent memory we have thrown under the bus in terms of questionable diplomatic incidents and flowery speeches. Israel has been our most staunch ally in the Middle East, and we must not forget this. We must not also forget the allies we gained in the late 1980s and early 1990s, the former communist states, such as Poland and the Czech Republic, who we agreed to provide missile protection to, and then reneged on the deal, saying we would at another time provide limited missile defense against the arsenal of Russia, but with no timetable. This is not a way to treat our allies. First and foremost, we need countries behind us before we're going to turn the entire world to the right freedom. We need to take a hard line against countries who are trying to proliferate nuclear weapons and threaten the very lives which we now live. These countries are some of, but not all, North Korea and predominantly Iran. North Korea has successfully created atomic weapons, and Iran is nearing their completion as each day passes, further and further enriching uranium, and each day undermining our security. We must not use a policy of appeasement, the same policy which failed 70 years ago to prevent World War II. That same policy to prevent us from these evil states. The United States must stand, as it has always stood, as a beacon of freedom, a beacon to oppressed people all over the world. We failed at this last summer when the Green Revolution seized Iran, and President Obama waited over a week to make any statement on the crisis. This is in contrast to the many speeches given by President Reagan in the late 1980s when Soviet states threatened to break away, and Ronald Reagan went on the television all over the world and said, "The United States is behind you, and we will stand behind you no matter what you do." This is how we win allies and how we win freedom. Further, I would like to close my opening statement by saying we need to stand strong not only in the physical sense, our national security, but in the financial sense as well. We are quickly heading down the road to becoming a debtor nation, with huge swaths of our national debt being bought up by foreign countries with questionable intentions towards us, such as China. This is not a way to enter the 21st century as the United States of America. We must not sell the soul of our grandchildren to foreign interests. Thank you very much.
The first question on the topic of foreign policy will be directed to Mr. Lombardi for a 3-minute response. Mr. Edwards will get a 2-minute rebuttal, and Mr. Lombardi will get a 1-minute final say. Okay. The question is, the United States and Russia recently signed a nuclear arms treaty. In your opinion, was this a wise move for the U.S. policymakers, given the Russian hostility toward U.S. missile defense shields in Eastern Europe? Was this a good decision considering the United States' strategic interests in Central Asia and the Caucasus? And will this advance the cause of non-proliferation? You have 3 minutes.
Okay, first off, yes, I think any treaty which would reduce the amount of deadly weapons in this world, at least in theory, is a good thing. Nuclear weapons are nobody's friend. A world without nuclear weapons, with no country wanting to or being able to produce these weapons, of course, would be a great goal. However, this goal is not attainable. My problem with the current treaty signed by Russia is this treaty allows Russia to opt out and once again rebuild their stockpiles. Given the hostility of the regime of Vladimir Putin to the United States in recent memory, is it truly wise to sign a treaty which reduces our strategic advantage in this world, especially in the world we currently live in, with a president who has at times been completely unwilling to compromise? As for missile defense first created under President Reagan in the 1980s under the Strategic Defense Initiative, is something this country should not, cannot, and will not give up. Missile defense is the most important thing facing us today. Whether it is the Russians who launch a nuclear missile at us, the Iranians, or any other rogue state, we must be protected. It is a pipe dream to think that just because the Russians sign a treaty, and maybe, I hope to God, will never fire a nuclear weapon at us, that no other state may. Missile defense is something we cannot abandon, whether the Russians use fancy rhetoric, threaten us, or anything else. If it gives us a tactical advantage, we must pursue it. Foreign policy, in the end, is for your nation to be ahead of others. Whether you bring your allies along because we have signed a treaty with them, we need to abandon all prospects of defending ourselves from the most deadly weapons that have ever been created on this world is not only far-fetched, it is dangerous, and it is immature.
Mr. Edwards, 2 minutes.
I'm sorry we appear immature to you. That's too bad. I think what we're seeing here again is the Republicans seem to have this notion that we're still stuck in the Cold War, that we're still fighting the great Soviet threat, threatening to take over the entire world. This is an old, tired notion. Russia, as it stands right now, is an emerging power working closely with the EU, old NATO allies, and frankly is a nation that we need to build strong ties with as we move into the 21st century. The missile defense shield in Central Europe, reducing it would, the main reason why they want it to be maintained is not because of the threat of Russia, it's the threat of rogue states in places like Iran or elsewhere. And the fact is, the threat of a nuclear attack in that country would most likely be, in a cart wheeled into the middle of Berlin, not by a missile being shot. That's the biggest fear of most people. So the missile defense shield is not really the biggest issue when it comes to combating nuclear proliferation. In fact, the missile defense shield and allowing these two great nations, Russia and the United States, to maintain their stockpiles actually promotes nuclear proliferation throughout the world. Proliferation breeds proliferation. We've seen that in Iran. When Israel created their nuclear weapons, it made Iran seek nuclear weapons of their own. That's the same thing that happened between the United States and Russia. If we continue this aggressive posture against Russia, we will only see this conflict between us continue to fester and grow at a time when it's very possible for us to work together. Now, in the treaty that's mentioned, one of the key elements is that before this, that Russia was against sanctions against Iran, and now they are for it because of the treaty, which is a huge step forward against nuclear non-proliferation. Thank you.
Mr. Lombardi, 1 minute.
I find my opponent's response humorous at best. Saying Russia is an emerging power is highly naive. We're talking about a country with 10,000 nuclear warheads. Those are just the ones we know of. With missile capability to hit every continent and every country on this planet. So saying that abandoning the goal of missile defense systems is completely insane. Furthermore, North Korea and Iran have both tested ballistic missiles. Within the past 2 years, they have tested ballistic missiles. North Korea has one capable of hitting California, and Iran has ballistic missiles which can hit most of Europe and Israel. So to say these countries are going to bring a bomb in a suitcase and we will never know about it is not comprehensible. These are countries that are building ballistic missile technology, would use the missiles, and we need to defend ourselves. Thank you.
Probably we should hold our applause till the end of the segment. Second question is directed at Mr. Edwards, with rebuttal and then final say. Last October, President Obama approved a more than 30,000 troop increase in Afghanistan. In your opinion, will this help bring the conflict in Afghanistan, or perhaps only America's part of it, to an end, or are more troops needed, or is some strategic shift needed in how those troops are deployed? What will the United States' role be in Afghanistan and South Central Asia in the near to midterm future?
Thank you.